The founder of the CEO of Fish Network on a mission to democratize access to private investing for everyone, not just the people already inside the room. Please welcome to the podcast, Joseph Argiro.
It was the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance in Business, Mindset, Wellness, and Success to help you master disruption.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is building something that sits right at the collision point of traditional finance and blockchain. And he's not interested in chasing the next AI trend to do it. Joseph Argiro is the founder of the CEO of Fish Network on a mission to democratize access to private investing for everyone, not just the people already inside the room. Please welcome to the podcast, Joseph Argiro.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to share the Fish Network mission and vision with you today.
Great. Well, I mean, why don't we start with that and just for like layman's terms, just explain on a high level, elevator pitch of what you do.
Sure. So Fish Network is a collaborative investing platform that allows people to pool capital together and invest in anything together, starting with venture capital.
Love it. That's exciting. I love the fact that you're an innovator. And let's just talk about exposure versus ownership and what is the difference and why does almost nobody understand it until it's too late?
Yeah, it's a really timely question. So 4 or 5 years ago, there was a bunch of bankruptcies in the crypto space. These asset managers and banks were taking too much risk, and they were lending out more money into riskier assets and just not managing the risk well enough. And then when liquidity collapsed in the market, they were left with their pants around their ankles, and they all went bankrupt, right?
Right.
This is the same thing that we're starting to see now, 4 years later, with a lot of these Y Combinator backed startups are receiving funding to enable trading and exposure to everything. And I'm starting to see the writing on the wall because most people don't care because they're just trading. They want to trade on exposure, and they're in, they're out. They don't really care about if they're actually trading the real thing or not, if the exposure is actually tied to the underlying asset. And but when push comes to shove, it really matters. And when that happens, if the people who aren't managing their risk correctly go bankrupt. So are you willing to wait in line and risk a lot of your money, like trading on these centralized exchanges 4 or 5 years ago when they all went bankrupt, and now you're waiting in line in a 4-year lawsuit, which you never wanted to do? And so
Right.
there's a lot of eerie similarities going on right now where people can trade exposure to anything, but few people are really considering the implications around ownership. And there's really that, sovereign, privacy-focused individual who, is willing to do the extra research and diligence to figure out what's going on. Those are the people that will win in the long run. And I think just most people are not really understanding that there's a huge difference between ownership and exposure. The ownership is a legal title to the asset. The exposure is really you're just trusting a counterparty, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. Well, just for our audience, explain the Y Combinator.
Sure. So in the past 6 to 12 months, there's been a lot of venture interest into these startups that enable trading on exposure. And I just happened to see about 5 of them, that 3 to 5 of them that got into Y Combinator. So it's a very hot trend right now, all piggybacking on this larger macro trend of prediction markets. So in the last couple of years, you've probably seen commercials on TV. Kalshi is one of them, Polymarket's another. But these are billion-dollar prediction markets that are allowing you to basically gamble or bet on anything. The US presidential election, and it can get weirder and weirder from there, right? Of what
Right.
you can bet on. And
Super Bowl.
yeah, Super Bowl, exactly, like really anything. And that's turns out people love to gamble, or maybe they think it's investing. But that trend has really accelerated, and really Fish Network has a structural advantage kind of riding that tailwind because we actually focus on the ownership, and exposure comes later, right? But if you start with exposure, you're just building a house of cards.
Right.
So
And if
yeah,
something's too good to be true, sometimes like in these Instagram posts, they're too good to be true, right?
exactly. And it's the world we live in now is people just promise big, and that's what attracts attention. And most people are just looking at a 5 second reel, right? They're not really looking underneath. But if you can capture both, if you can capture distribution and attention, and you also have something real underneath, that's a winning combination.
Well, thanks for breaking it down for me. It's really fascinating. Like, if things sometimes sound too good to be true, they can be too good to be true unless you truly are a gambler and you just want to like bet the farm. And any more on that before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, if it seems like it's too good to be true, I've found that it usually is.
Good to
You
know.
people people just want a lot of people just want something for nothing, and so it's nice to trust people, but you should verify.
Trust but verify. Excellent quote. Okay, moving on. You said crypto VCs are predatory hedge funds in disguise. What's a trust problem you're seeing, and why does it matter?
Yeah, so in the last decade, but really specifically the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of scams in private markets specifically, but crypto broadly.
Right,
And most people who made money in the liquid crypto markets would effectively gamble it away on what were called private sales, but really it's like venture stage, risky or early stage opportunities and startups. And there was a lot of bad behavior going on, and people got away with it, and for a
right.
long period of time. But now that has started to shift over the last 2 or 3 years. That the real use cases that are getting funded and getting attention are real world solutions with blockchain, rather than just like the latest crypto casino gambling prediction market, right? And
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
just it's just a natural evolution, and it took a long time for the industry to grow up.
right. I mean, it's always tempting to me. It's like, Bitcoin and XRP, and you see all this, so it's going to be worth like $10,000. If you have 1,000 in XRP, it'll be worth 1 million, and blah 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 blah. Like that, based on actual nothing, right?
Yeah, and it really didn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you think about human nature, then it starts to make more sense, where people are just, you know, piling into riskier assets and not really thinking it through. And there's just a lot of people like that. So really, what happened is that a lot of bad actors were able to get away with bad behavior over the years, and that's part of the reason we built Fish Network as with a reputation based capital pooling protocol, so that it's a lot harder to get away with scams and bad behavior, because we KYC everyone, we verify everyone's identity, we do anti money laundering checks on everyone who's raising capital. So it just eliminates a lot of the fuckery in the space that just shouldn't be there.
Right.
And that's what, like, one of the pillars of like why we're building Fish Network, to just democratize access to trusted US private markets globally.
Awesome. Well, I think that people should also realize that some of these Instagram influencers are paid from the actual stocks themselves, right? Paid by the stocks to
Yeah,
promote
yeah.
them.
Everyone's just pumping their own bags. That's what we call it in the crypto space, is really they're just marketing the things that they have an interest in with little or no loyalty, right? Over what they're, whoever's willing to pay them to post content about it. These are what we call mercenaries in the space, who are just
Right.
like really just, accepting the highest dollar. But and it's rare to find the opposite, which is the missionaries who are doing it because they truly believe, and they might have exposure or ownership, probably ownership, hopefully ownership. But
Right.
these missionaries are few and far between nowadays. Like everyone in the crypto space 5, 10 years ago, like myself, we got in it for the ideology, right? For the sovereignty, the self sovereignty over owning your own money, starting with Bitcoin.
Right.
And that's the way the industry started. And over the last 5, 10 years, it just the missionaries just lost their voice, and now 99% of the market is just a mercenary doing it for a dollar, and that's why we saw such bad behavior in the last 5, 10 years, like the gambling, crypto, casino, prediction markets, and trading on exposure with no real ownership and no real accountability. But those days are coming to an end.
I love your experience in 10 years ago. You were heading up a blockchain asset for UBS, right?
Yeah, that was my most recent gig. I was just helping professionalize some of the institutional quality crypto investing strategies in liquid crypto and venture capital. But I started on a derivatives trading desk at Vanguard, and then in 2017, when the price of Bitcoin started going up, I just saw it as the next big thing. So I went all in. I joined a crypto startup that was like version one of Fish Network. Fish Network is like the compliant version of 5.0 of the startup that we built in 2017. But this was allowing retail investors to invest in these blockchain startups, which were called ICOs, or initial coin offerings, if you can remember that far back. But that's all crypto
Yeah.
was in 2017.
Yeah.
And we built a marketplace around that, around which was essentially just illegal fundraising of people raising money for a token which had no real ties to the profit interest in the business. And they were just like selling a dream with, like, again, nothing behind the scenes, right? They were selling exposure without ownership, is one way to put it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I saw that firsthand, and that's like ultimately I took a lot of learnings from derivatives and a lot of learnings from building that ICO marketplace, which was ICOalert.com. And back in 2017, if you Googled ICO, we were the top search result on Google. So we built a business model around that. And we were very like high flying on private jets. We grew to 50 people in 6 months, and then it all fell apart
Yeah.
because it was a house of cards ultimately, and like I said, illegal
Yeah.
fundraising. So, ultimately, it took seeing that stuff firsthand to navigate through the space, and it took years to try to figure out what was actually needed.
Well, thanks for authentically sharing that experience and that story, because it's like we've all been in a house of cards at some point in our life that's been knocked down. But it's just sometimes you see these masters of the universe types that don't tell their real stories of failures. And I started this podcast during the pandemic when everything was hard for me. And I realized it wasn't just my story, it was everybody's story. So thanks for authentically sharing the real stuff and keeping it real. And just diving back into your story a little bit more, just tell me the Fish Network story and what problem are you actually solving?
Sure. So private markets is the last remaining frontier for average investors to make life-changing returns. From 2015 to 2021, if you bought Facebook or Amazon stock, you made a ton of money, or all fill
Right.
in the blank, right? You made a ton of money. It was easy to make money because money was cheap. And if you had money, you could park it in blue chip tech stocks, and you made a killing. In crypto, the same thing happened. If you were early enough to crypto, 2017 to 2021 and later, even if you didn't really know what you were doing, you could easily made a ton of money.
Right.
That has changed. Interest rates have gone up over the last couple of years. It's harder to make money. And
Right.
private markets, so public markets and crypto, the train has left the station. You're competing with billion-dollar hedge funds that are in that space, in the crypto space too now. You're going to compete with Citadel's billion-dollar AI trading machine? You're not. Private
No.
markets is the only thing left for the average investor to make like really life-changing money, and that's why we're building a system around it, Fish Network.
Well, thanks for explaining it because I'm super interested in this topic. And final question, if private investing finally got democratized the way you're building it, what would change first for the average person?
The average person would feel confident investing in high risk opportunities because there's guardrails in place to avoid or filter out some of the nonsense that seems to get through to the mainstream in private markets, because there is no compliance and accountability layer like what Fish Network provides. So that's what changes, is that retail investors now can confidently invest in private markets and get exposure to the assets that are actually going to make them money, rather than just institutional players making all the money.
And some of the guardrails being that you're investing in a pool with others.
Right. So that comes with certain inherent safeguards and protections. Let me give you an example. So you're splitting the diligence, right? So everyone's responsible for vetting the startup and trying to uncover maybe what the founder's trying to hide from you to raise money, and what are they missing, right? And I call it the hair in the deal. You're trying to find a needle in a haystack, but there's no investment is perfect. There's always a
Right.
weakness. So if you have 99 people all looking for that needle in the haystack, you have a lot better chance that you're going to find it, right? Rather than just bearing all the cost and time of sourcing the investment, doing the diligence, and then dying by your own sword. Who has time for that?
Right.
You might as well do it
I
with other
love it.
smart experts and split the risk, reward, and diligence cost.
I've heard it said before in different ways about the hair in the deal or the fur on the deal or whatever fun ways you can put it. So I really think it's fun talking to you and like have you keep it real about what's really going on and doing it the right way. So where can people find more of you and Fish Network?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter at fishnetwork.co. We're on all the top media platforms at fishnetwork.co.
Right.
And Twitter and LinkedIn is the best place to find me personally. And would love to engage with you, especially if you're looking to invest in private markets.
Well, thanks for being a great guest, Joseph.
Thank you so much for having me on, Lisa. I love explaining why people should get involved in this space.